Welcome to More Than Just a Girl, the podcast where we spotlight women like our guest today who are breaking those glass ceilings and making a difference in the world. So I'm your host, Ramichia, and today we have our guest, Miss Katie Usher, with us. I said your name right?
Yes.
Yeah, my name, okay. So thank you, Katie, for being with us. It's an absolute pleasure to have you here. So I know you as an artist and as a feminist, but tell us, who is Katie? Because nobody to tell us who you are better than you.
Right. Well, first of all, thank you so much for inviting me. I have been following your journey since high school, and you've always been somebody who's really inspiring to me because you're a go-getter. You know, you do things, you go, you push. A footballer, I don't remember wrong.
Yes, I play football.
I don't remember bad, but not that bad.
And I'm not too bad they are.
Right? So I was really, really excited when you invited me, you know, because it's always good to share your story. And I guess if I could explain myself, I love to read, I love to dance, I love languages, I love to learn, I love history. Like, that's one of my favorite things ever. And of course, I love art. So, you know, all the forms, music, literature, visual arts, anything, all the things, even the new things, like all with this, like all the little Gen Zers, all the new things that they're doing, all the new with the content. And I'm like, oh, that's interesting to me as well. I want to learn all about that.
Yeah. My understanding is you studied science first,
Right.
and then you went away to Mérida to study art.
Right.
Now, that seems like a huge leap. Could you tell us a little bit about the challenge in that change?
Right.
From science?
The art, definitely. So at SC, I did biology and chemistry and social studies. And I'm glad I did social studies because it kind of kept me grounded in the culture aspect. When I went to sixth form, I was thinking about architecture, but I don't have the maths nor physics background. So I was like, I don't know about that. So that's when I started to like move away and like get into more art, and took a couple art classes with Michelle Perdomo, Kirkland Smith, Yasser Musa, and then Gilvana would come and help us too. Gilvana Swayze. So that was really cool, and I got really intrigued. And so the closer I got to Image Factory Art Foundation, which is now called The Imagination Factory, I met Joan Duran, who is Catalonian, but he's been living in Belize since the 70s. Him and his ex-wife, they have Kubola Books. And he was like the cultural attaché there in Mérida for Belize. So I just happened to go there, and there was this new art school opening in this abandoned train station. So they were refitting it out. I was like, so let me try. I don't speak Spanish at this time, you know, like no Spanish, well apply, and that's it. Conjugate verbs, that's it. But that don't really help if you like be conversational. So then my family like, but what you want to do with art really, you know, like how does culture fit in, and what was the point of studying science? But I'm really glad that I studied science, because to me science is about curiosity, it's about experimentation, it's about research, it's about imaginations, maybe you call it theories and a hypothesis, and then afterwards you do all these experiments to see, okay, how close or far. And I have that same approach when it comes to any art project that I take on. So it was a really good science to me, was an excellent foundation for art. And people might not always see it, but it's right.
I see it clearly, because I never thought of that hypothesis and theories being just a wild imagination. My mom always said I had a wild imagination, so you must be right. Good. You say you studied art in Mérida. Now, for me, you say you didn't know any Spanish either. For me, you in Mérida, a very Black Creole Belizean woman in a very Latino, Maya, Spanish culture, that must have been like
A clash.
How was that?
Well, the first thing is like, when you get there in the beginning, I don't really speak Spanish. So everything was like phenomena to me, right? Because everything is new and everything I don't understand. So then I hurry, get my dictionary, I'll open it. Okay. But then, you know, I was like several conversations ago, right? So in the beginning, it was just me having this new experience, new culture, like you said, definitely. You could take Maya, definitely Spanish colonial. Anybody who has visited Mérida, you could see it in the buildings. It's very Spanish colonial. And in fact, their tagline to the city is
La Ciudad Blanca, right? So it was like, oh,
Okay. I didn't really feel included in that because it seemed very everything that I'm not, right? I come from Ali Village, like, I was born in Southern National because my mom was working in Central Farm. Okay. And I grew up between Belize, like Belize City and Malmopana, Ladyville, so more rural than these big urban centers. But what was good about being in Mérida is that there is this, for me, there was constantly this meeting between the pre-Hispanic and the colonial.
okay.
And a lot of times the encounter of those, especially when we study history, has always been very violent. But somehow with the architecture, they found ways to fuse, and maybe that's unintentional, maybe it's just for tourism. But definitely, as much as I hate what colonialism did and continues to do, it's an inevitability. I mean, it happened. We can't go back and change it. But definitely we could try find avenues where we could coexist. And that's something I really saw a lot in their architecture. Like you would see these huge, beautiful colonial structures, but then you would see a lot of the hammocks, and the tile would have pre-Hispanic, and then some of the wall tiles would have pre-Hispanic style. So I'm like, there's always a way to go around things. There's always a way to coexist and figure out how we could find maybe not a middle ground, but how we could all exist together and all be seen and all be visible. So in that sense, it was very helpful for me. And I saw Memenquingin, which for people who are Latino, whether they're in Mexico or in Central America or in the Caribbean, they might have been very familiar. I wasn't familiar. I'd never seen him before. And it was a violent thing to see, just out in the public. And then I started to do some research. That's where the science comes in, what is this cartoon? What does it mean? Who's behind it? And I think I really started to see, that there is sometimes where when there's not visibility, it lends itself to a lot of speculation, a lot of assumptions, and a lot of generalization. So I said, you know what, I want to make images that show Black people in a better light. And as I was doing that research, I actually found out that Mérida actually had a huge Black population that was still invisibilized, yeah. Wow. Mexico has a Black population that really wasn't recognized on their books until I think about 2015 or something like that, during the decade of Afro-descendant peoples. And I was like, maybe you explain some stuff. I did. Mérida is La Ciudad Blanca, which means the white city. Right. So with that, that's a mouthful right there. There's nothing else needs to be said there. So now coming back to Belize now, let's hit home a little bit. You came back to Belize, and being a woman, how has that influenced your experience on the cultural scene? And do you think that being a woman has made your acceptance into society as an artist, as a woman in general, easier or harder? Right. Oh, okay. Good question. I think it really, really has to do with perspective. Definitely, as an engineer, you would know that a lot of the fields in Belize are still vastly male-dominated, right? Your boss is a dude, probably your supervisor. A lot of your coworkers are dudes. For some years, I've been working in media. It's the same thing. It's not like, for example, education, where maybe you have more women teachers. Or maybe even nursing, where you have more women nurses. You still, art, I feel, like engineering and maybe some other practices in Belize, still very male-dominated. So you to come into a space where not a lot of youth about, and maybe they want to have 5 opportunities, and there are 20 of you, and they want to make a fight to the death. But I don't know that it I'm a lover girl. I don't fight nobody for nothing. Sorry, I don't fight for man. I don't fight for space. It's if I can't fit, I will make one next thing for me. I hope I have a next something on the side. But definitely, it's been difficult. But I take difficulties as challenges. I take them on as, okay, so make a though. How much you really want this thing? How much you really want these spaces, and how much work you're willing to put in. And so I've been working with people off and on to create spaces for ourselves. If we're not feeling included, then we do this. If we feel that we need something else, then we rally for that. So I think it really is challenging, but that has really pushed me to do a lot. Because I think if it was just easier, like an easy little introduction, it is a high possibility that the things I've accomplished so far, I wouldn't have been do. I have a, I'm not to say I wouldn't have been do anything, but sometimes when things very easy and there's no need to push yourself because like it's given to you, in a funny kind of way. It's like, okay, you hold the hand, take this. And then sometimes they would really appreciate it. You start to take things for granted because when you fight for something, you understand the value, you understand how difficult it was to get there. You're like, listen, we gotta make sure we protect this, and we gotta make sure we make it easier for all the other young women artists that are trying to come into the field. It's like, I don't want none of them go through what I had to go through. That's right. I want to make them have it much easier. I want to make them challenge themselves with other things. It's like, let's be more innovative. Let's see how we could like connect with people and artists from different countries. Then make we figure out how we could be included. Like make we do that, make we war that, and then gonna do something.
I love that because a part of what I try to do with all of the stuff that I do is that I believe that we older women, I'm not calling you old, but we're not 20 anymore.
Yeah, I'm going to be 30 for it, and I had no problem with that. I could be older, yeah.
Yeah, but
I could be a tia.
All right.
Yeah, I'll take it.
Okay, good. Because I'm 43, but I believe that one of our jobs on this earth is to make it a better place. And the only way we can do that is to fight those fights, not only for ourselves, but those that come behind us, like the many women that have come before us that have made it easier for us to be included too. So, so with that, I feel like you're my spirit animal right now because I so see that to be the way to go. It's not about being selfish and finding your space only, but it's making new spaces. I love how you put that. It's spaces not only for you, it's spaces for other people to fit too. That's in Belize. I understand internationally you've shown your art in the Americas and in Europe. Mm-hmm. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, as I said, coming back to the limited opportunities that are available to creative people in Belize, I said, well, you know what? If they're not going to have me at home, I'm going to figure out where they're going to have me. So that sent me out into the crazy online world of what's available to artists. And I always encourage artists, always apply as a Belizean artist because they always say, Belize, where's that? Oh, yeah, like, I've never met a Belizean before, So that actually works to our benefit. A lot of times, the fact that people might not know about you or you're not as known as maybe some of the other Caribbean islands like maybe Jamaica or Barbados, it works to our benefit. So it's always, the first Belizean, and it helps me, gets me into a lot of doors. I always tell people not feel intimidated by the fact that they might not know about Belize. Use it as your strength. It's like, well, I will show you. I'm going to show you what Belize is all about in 2 seconds, right? So it got me to, the first one I did was in Wakefield, which was an art residency. I met a lot of people from different parts of the world, and it was a good opportunity to get to know the United Kingdom, but not like in a big London sense where there's a lot of people and very populated. This is like maybe an hour train away from Manchester, so it's very rural. It was not intimidating, and it was an opportunity to see how other people approach art in different countries as well. And then after that, we got the opportunity to go to Cuba with a book that we did about, Belizean women. And that was cool, because I'd never been to Cuba before. I'd never been there. And I said, you know what? This is what art does as well. And culture really connects us. And it gives us an opportunity to have like an open heart space and mind space to learn new things, meet new people. And a lot of times, like, I might think I have an answer to something. And then I go to another country and I see somebody doing it, I won't say more successfully, but maybe in a sense different than mine. And it's intriguing to me. I get curious about it. So definitely those experiences in Europe and in the Americas has really showed me, that there are many, very many ways to do something. And so, yeah, it's good. And I always say, they're from Belize. And then now they know about Belize. So now they can start look for us. And I always tell them, please, I am not the only Belizean. Usually when I go to these places, I spend a lot of time talking about other Belizean artists. And I remember one of the criticisms the very first time in Wakefield, they said, but why are you spending your time talking about all these other artists? I said, because you don't even know about Belize. So I don't have any context. So if I tell you what is available in my country, that kind of situates me somewhere, than just me floating in space like a star, which is good. But I mean, I don't know what I like to be connected to a context, you know. It explains what I am and why things are important to me.
And it's good to shine light on others. I mean, it's take all the spotlight for yourself. They might miss somebody else that maybe helped you to get to where you are. So I always believing in sharing the flowers and sharing the spotlight. Always. Reading up about you, looking up on your social media, I found something that I didn't quite understand. Maybe it's because I'm not such a history pro or anything, but you have a piece of art called Eating Sugar in Front of Henry Tate. Explain that to us. What is that piece about? What are you trying to give off with that?
Tate and Lyle sugars are the two big sugar conglomerates of the United Kingdom. One is from England, which is Henry Tate. Another one, Abraham Lyle, is from Scotland. After they both had passed, they were competitors in life, but when they passed, their children decided to do that fusion, kind of like how we've done with BSI, ESR now.
Okay.
They just amalgamate the companies. So in the 60s, the Tate and Lyle company purchased our Corozal sugar factory. I think it was called at the time, or Libertad sugar factory.
Oh, okay.
And definitely, you know, it's still, Belize was still colonized, so it was beneficial to them. We got independence 1981. By 1985, they're like, well, we're not making any money. Sugar is a losing game, so we're going to pull out. And that has still widely devastated Libertad Village. That was one of the big sugar factories. I didn't employ a lot of people. And then everything was moved to Tower Hill, but it had an impact on Orange Walk as well. What I didn't know was that my great-grandfather worked at the Libertad sugar factory. And in fact, he almost, you could say he died there because he got a massive stroke. And then by the time I took him to the hospital in Corozal from Libertad, he didn't make it. I went with some friends to the old abandoned sugar factory. And so I was there. I was walking through the whole facilities. I didn't even realize that personal connection. And I think a lot of time we don't realize our connection sometimes when we're in a space. And then before it was a sugar factory, it was actually a plantation when they had enslaved Africans. So there's that history of calling it, you know, Pembroke Estate, and later the Melados would purchase it and became the Corozal Sugar Works. But it was connected to me. So now in 2022, I had this opportunity to do this art residency in Gasworks. So I get there and we're walking around and, you know, it's Lambeth and I'm really familiar because, again, a lot of times you're in places but you're not making the connection. And I tried to get to our archives at the British Library. That never worked out. It's like, oh my gosh. But then one day I was just walking and I saw Henry Tate just in Brixton, and I was like, it seemed weird, like the guy from the ASR, because the ASR, one of the companies underneath it is the Tate and Lyle. Like they have Cedral from Portugal, they have C&H, which I think like California and Hawaii. Like they have all these sugar refineries all over the world under ASR, which now owns our BSI majority share. So I was like, okay, what is this guy doing here? So I started to do the research of who is this Henry Tate, and like also he was living in this area. So okay. So I can get into this library to get these archives, but I can do some research on who this person is, how he connects to Belize, and to kind of show why I'm outside it from these spaces. So I just started to do these performances where I'm standing outside the buildings because he was rich. I guess it was kind of to show, you know, like I am a Belizean, we're an ex-colony of the United Kingdom. Now I'm like in that colonial power of being in London, being in that space, but being outside. And then so I post them on TikTok, and I'm like, I don't really get TikTok as an art space. Like, and I said, but it's what I have access to. So I'll just use what I have to do what I want. And then so all my Belizeans at home, they start to worry about me. It's like, Katie, are you okay? Why are you eating outside? Do you have a place to stay? It's like, what's going on? You know, like, sis, is everything okay? Are you fine? Yeah, I mean, if I hear like eating the rest of it, yes, if I can go, who I need to talk to, you know? It's like, in that sense, it got some attention. It's like, why is this girl? Because, you know, when we go that foreign, you know, and so we went at a place, you know, and I still fit and take pictures, and everything is good. What you won't see is us like on a street corner, so they eat something, and then also post things on social media, like what's going on. So we did have the conversation, you know, it's like, well, you know, this guy, and it's still connecting to us, you know, right now, the cane farmers in Orange Walk and in Corozal are still, fighting for their fair trade premiums from ESI, DSR. So it's still a struggle. With the sugar, it's still a struggle. It's a part of our colonial history because you had the Maya who developed, the same Maya who escaped the caste war, like they left Yucatan, they came to Belize, and then when they had developed sugar, because we know the British over here never know over the sugar, when they done developing all them things, and they're like, oh, okay, well, we are strong that fire. Because Belize has that colonial history of just taking land away from the indigenous Belizeans, right? And whether the Yucatec, Maya, Quechua, they took their things away, and then they also use enslaved labor of African people, right? So it was all of that wrapped up into one thing.
With that come the misunderstood. As artists, most of the time we are misunderstood. And being a woman in art, I wonder about female artists because I've only heard of a few. Everybody knows Frida.
Yes.
Of course, you can't not know Frida. Mary Cassatt.
Yeah,
I think it is. And then there is Georgia O'Keeffe. I pronounce it right?
O'Keeffe, yeah.
Yes. And maybe one or two others that I slightly heard about, but I actually sat down and was doing some research about women in art and found out that there's not much, or there wasn't much until recently when women started to look for history of women in art. So while you were studying art, did they highlight any women? I mean,
right. So good question. And like you, when I went to study, I didn't know many women artists. And it was always very strange to me because I said, no, there's no way that it's only these dude bros making art. Absolutely not. Absolutely not, right? Because actually before us, as soon as people are developing cognitive function, they're developing societies, they're making art. A lot of times women's history is relegated to like the nothingness, we're not told. Like you said, everybody know Frida, but for a big part of what they know about Frida, a lot of it is still, Diego Rivera's wife, which, sure, of course, that is a part of her story by all means. But also it's that she was doing her own thing. She was exploring just as he was exploring when it came to art, and she was changing how people see Latin American art and Latin American women making art. So I think we should put some respect on what people do and not just say, so-and-so wife. But that's kind of what art history does. And like you said, what has been helpful is a lot of women deciding, we're going to unearth all these stories that don't get put in art theory and art history and show what were their stories, why they paint like this or why they sculpt like that or why do they dance in the manner of which they do, even if you don't see them in the book, even if you don't hear about them in your art history class, they're making there.
Apart from not hearing enough about women in art, I was hunting and searching and couldn't find much about Black women in art. Black female erasure in art. This is a thing. And like I said, I've been looking up, I've been trying to find out more about it, but I don't find much about Black women in art. So I know you're doing some work with that, aren't you? Tell us a little bit about that.
So definitely, just like we don't hear about women, we don't hear about Indigenous women. We don't hear about Black women. We don't hear about Asian women. And this is one of the vestiges of colonialism, because basically what they do is they create what castas, right? There's a caste system. And of course, aspiration is always to whiteness. So everything that does not fit, we don't have to record. And so even when we read history, we will hear far more about somebody prolific as she was, Frida Kahlo, but we won't hear about the women, the indigenous women of Mexico that inspired her paintings and inspired her, even the way she dressed and, her, people would say her forma de ser, just how she presents herself, her way of being. And so definitely I took it upon myself to say, you know what, if I'm not seeing what I want, I need to go looking for it. And sometimes, a lot of times, the things are right beside you. But it's a matter of also to decolonizing our interests and our focus. Like I could spend a lot of time, an artist that I love so much, Van Gogh, I could spend all my time just, looking at his paintings and reading this diary and everything. because it's so available, as a white European man, his work was seen as important, actually, not during his time, but way after. So it's easy to find. But maybe if I want to find out about, for example, how Maya women are doing sculpture in San Antonio, Cayo right now, I may not find that. But I could go to San Antonio, Cayo right now, and there is the San Antonio Women's Collective that they're making traditional Maya sculpture where you go to the riverside, you collect all that clay, you clean it, you separate it by colors, and you make pottery. And so a lot of it is us just like refocusing, changing, what we see as important. A lot of times to say, oh, how difficult, that time consuming. So I spend a lot of time doing that.
Well, I'm glad that you're doing all of that. I mean, it's amazing because, like you said, you go to somewhere as close as Sukkots, where the women, they make these knitted, the hammocks and the different clothing, very colorful, very beautiful clothing. And people just look at it like a piece of cloth, but they don't really look at what's on that cloth, the Mayan hieroglyphics that they put there that have meaning. Right. And I think digging up art, you find out how amazing and fascinating it is. It is telling us a story of our past, where we came from. Absolutely. So I always believe you can't know where you're going if you don't know where you came from. So changes for women in art. Mm-hmm. Do you think that it's finally changing? Do you think that there's a little bit more exposure, a little bit more sensitivity that women artists do exist?
Right. I think it's so different now because the access we have to this fast internet has really changed the game as far as there's what you're going to learn at school, but there's access to everything. And of course, you have to be discriminate, right? You can't just every single thing. There's AI making all kinds of craziness. So of course, you need to, check a change and make sure you're not listen to some crazy conspiracy theories. But it's a wonderful time to be alive as far as access to information are from all over the place. Of course, there are still a lot of regions where don't have access to high-speed internet or where they're still having to, you've lived in Cuba, in some countries you do have to very self-censure and make sure you know what you're putting all this on against the state. So definitely you have to sift through that as well. But I think it's much better for women in art. I think that what has helped, honestly for me, if I could share my experience, is that I think the movements of the most marginalized people around the world, whether it's trans activists, Black women, disability activists, is that they're showing us that once their rights are met, everybody else's rights met. And so it's been really helpful to see some of the tactics and the strategies that they use to access their rights, how they disseminate information, how they share information, how they gather information, because I've also now used some of those in my own research tactics and strategies. So yeah, I think actually we're gonna be okay. I really, really feel that, even if it don't look like that right this moment.
I guess it didn't look like that 100 years ago either, and it's looking brighter today.
Right.
So like I say, it might not look like roses, but we're planting the seeds.
We're trying.
Before you wrap up, what advice would you give to a young female artist who is looking to get into studying art, practicing art, to being art?
I would tell them that, not make anybody tell you who you are, because you're the only one who knows who you really are. And that's going to take you a long time to figure out. And who you are will change from time to time. And who I am right now on the window or on the border of 38 is not who I was 20 years ago. And that's fine. And please, it's always okay to change your mind. And also to work in community. So definitely, I would say that you could do it by yourself, and by all means, congrats if you're able to. But if you're able to work with scientists, if you're able to work with children, if you're able to work with marginalized communities, you'll learn a lot. You're going to be able to put that into your practice, and it'll be really, really helpful. It will be what school outside of school. And it's like you've said, in several little different ways,
when you're coming along, bring somebody with you. The party is more fun with company than when you come alone. Thank you for joining us, and thank you so much for doing this, shedding light, and making it okay to be a girl.
If you've enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to the podcast and leave us a review. Your support helps us to reach more listeners and continue to share these important stories. I'm Ramachia, and I'll see you on the next episode. Until then, keep dreaming big, breaking barriers, and blazing your own trails.